As a small business, your marketing budget is somewhat limited, and so most of that business is word of mouth, and that starts with a good experience. I mean, certainly it starts with doing good work, but it's not just the end product too. It's the experience that the prospect and eventually the client gets along the way.
You're listening to Stories from the Top, an inside guide to better business development. All right, we're back once more with Mike Foering of Custom Craft. Mike, for those people who haven't caught the first few episodes, can you just give a quick intro of who you are and what Custom Craft does?
Yeah, so we are a design build remodeling company. We are based in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, and we serve Montgomery, Bucks, a little bit of Chester, Delaware County. It's a family business. My dad started the business back in the early 80s, and so we've been in business a little over 40 years now. So yeah, it's been going well. We're growing and doing well.
Beautiful. Well, today we're talking about five-star client experiences, something you guys know quite a bit about. What's kind of your approach to customer relationships and building a long-term relationship with your clients?
Yeah, so that is something that we focus in on pretty heavily as a small business. I think working in a community that we both my dad and I grew up in, you want to be making sure that we're delivering on what we say we're delivering, and people are having a good experience along the way, because that's really how we started growing, was just repeat business, referrals, and we're still doing projects for folks that my dad worked for 20, 30 years ago, so that is still kind of paying dividends. And as a small business, your marketing budget is somewhat limited, and so most of that business is word of mouth, and that starts with a good experience. And so for us, I think there's a couple things that that have enabled us to deliver a really good experience. I mean, certainly it starts with doing good work. Something that is going to hopefully exceed their expectations in terms of what it looks like, how it functions, what it feels like. But it's not just the end product too. It's the experience that the prospect and eventually the client gets along the way. And some things I know that we focus on are number one, I think we have an established process. It's something that is evolving, but it's something that we have built over the 30, 40 plus years that we've been in business. We're constantly learning and improving what we do. And having an established process gives us the ability to, learn and implement from, previous projects, and things that went well, we can lean into and try to do better. And things that didn't go as planned, we have the ability to go back and say, hey, let's take a look at how we're doing that. What is our process? And let's adjust that to try to make that correction moving forward. So, it starts with having a good established process that you use and everybody's bought into. I think another big thing for us is communication, and managing expectations, so making sure that when kind of people come into our pipeline, we're educating them about, what's happening, not only what's happening now, what's going to happen next, and what happens after what happens next, because I think when people have an understanding of what's coming up, it gives them a chance to ask questions. We can kind of observe and maybe read into what some of their concerns might be and see if we can help, alleviate those ahead of time. And I think that generally just it lowers the anxiety level. For our business, we're working in people's homes. It is uncomfortable. Your home is under construction. Most folks are living in the space. And so, to kind of help lower that anxiety level, giving them an idea of like what's happening. When are they going to get their space back? So having good communication, managing expectations, I think contributes to that. And then I think the other element for us is just having we call it like a guided process. So at each point along the way, you have a point of as a client, there is a point of contact in our business that is working with them and is kind of their guide and advocate along the way. So they're never kind of left like, hey, who do I call? Like I'm calling, am I calling a main number here, or am I calling somebody on the cell phone? They've got somebody that's assigned to them to kind of help them navigate, whether it's the design and development step or in production. There's someone there guiding them and answering their questions and being there to support them when things come up. So, I mean, there's a number of elements there that we laid out, but I think all those elements kind of contribute to our ability to, deliver a good, consistent experience.
Is there kind of, I guess you call it like KPIs you set up to kind of track? Similar to us, you have a long process with multiple stages of it, from talking to someone to finishing a project. Is there a process you guys have to be able to track the client's, I guess, emotional temperature throughout the process to make sure that, oh, we're starting to notice during production it gets really bad, or design phase people are getting anxious about things like this? Do you guys have a process to kind of see, based on which stage of production they're in, what the temperature is on the client satisfaction?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the way that our process is set up, I mean, we have milestones through, both development and then on to production. And oftentimes those milestones revolve around like significant client interactions, like starting from the get-go for us, like once we're engaged with a client that, maybe we're remodeling some portion of their home and they're starting to work with our design and development team. The first step there is our pre-design meeting. And so they're meeting with our designer that's been assigned to their project. And that's where we're starting to build on the expectations that were set during that sales process. And our designer, part of that is, kind of gauging what's important to them, what concerns do they have. And then the next major interaction would be when we're presenting schematic plans. And again, part of that is, hey, not only are we presenting schematic plans for how we're proposing to reconfigure their space, but again, we're leaning into like, how are you feeling so far? What do you like about this? Do you have concerns about this? And at kind of each step in our process, there's touch points there where, we have something that either we're presenting or checking, and that's an opportunity for us to, not only deliver on what they hired us to do, but also check in with them and say, how's your experience been going? Do you have concerns? Here's what's coming up next. Do you have any concerns about, how that might play out?
Have you identified any like specific things that can happen that can kind of throw things off the rails in terms of client experience? Like any specific situations that you try to avoid, or just like what's the most challenging thing for the client that can disrupt that good customer experience?
Well, just kind of thinking back through, through some projects. And I mean, no project is perfect, at any time especially with home remodeling, every home is built differently. Even when you're in the same neighborhood, like, it's like, hey, you would expect that the plumbing ran down this wall because in your neighbor's house it did. But I guess that day the plumber decided to run it over here. And, that was something that was unexpected and now is, maybe how are we going to handle this now? I probably would maybe just go back to like expectations. I think people generally get maybe frustrated or maybe don't feel like they're having a great experience when their expectations aren't met. And so oftentimes we'll kind of debrief that and be like, all right, well, was there something that we could have done, leading up to this, that may have helped, either something we could have identified if it's, something with our construction techniques, or maybe something that we may encounter in the future that we want to account for, or maybe it's just a matter of, making sure we're communicating something more regularly. I think an area of focus recently has been schedule. As we've grown, just making sure that if people have a certain expectation, that we're communicating that. And in our business, especially in the design and development stage, and you guys might experience this too, clients have a pretty significant effect on how quickly or slowly you get through that. And sometimes that can get lost in their understanding of how that will affect, our completion date. And, what we've tried to do is, I think we've made some assumptions in the past, like, oh, well, this is taking a little bit longer because maybe this client wanted to explore, a little bit more how their space could look, or they wanted to dig a little bit deeper into something, or they just needed extra time to kind of process what we shared with them. And that affected our construction timeline. And I think, in years past, we may have said, oh, well, that's intuitive, right? Like you took longer. So, that may affect that. I think what we've learned is that it's better to just communicate that. Like, hey, we're still in the development stages. Let's do a temperature check here on timeline and understand that, here's where we're at. If we can make the decisions by this date, I think we can keep on track. If you feel like you need a little extra time, that's okay too. That probably means that construction is probably going to be moved out a little bit. That way it gives them the opportunity as the client to, kind of weigh into that. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that. You know what? I'll go figure this out over the weekend and I'll get back to you Monday. Or, hey, we understand, we're good. It's important that we take our time here. We're fine with that shift. So, that's an example of something that has come up more recently with us, and we're trying to kind of evolve our processes to kind of give people more of that information up front so they can, better manage their expectation, and, and we can kind of deliver a little more consistently on that.
Yeah, that was something I definitely noticed in the interviews we did recently with your clients. They were so impressed that everything went exactly on time, like it was scheduled, and your process followed through with all the expectations that you had set. And coming in with the construction industry, they were actually expecting more delays and expecting more chaos, but you guys stuck and did exactly what you said you were going to do, which made you stand out as they were giving their testimonials. So,
Well,
so
good
that's
to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like that's something for us too. The longer we've been in business, the more expectations we set ahead of time, because it just takes all the guesswork out of it. And if they know what's coming, there's no surprises. Yeah. How do you guys deal with someone who, despite tons and tons of expectations being laid out, start getting antsy, or maybe they weren't paying attention and are just, sometimes just there's some clients are better than others at the end of the day, to be completely honest. How do you guys deal with someone who's, you're giving them what you would think is a 5-star service, but they're not perceiving it that way?
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably a case-by-case basis, and it really depends on like what the challenge is and maybe what in particular they're struggling with. And, I think ultimately, and I've said this many times to people, it's like, hey, our goal is to deliver a great experience for you. We are doing our best, and we have, kind of a process that we feel like enables us to do that consistently. But if there's something that, we can do or we can talk to you about, let us know. And the sooner that we know that, the better, because, then we have a little bit of time, hopefully, to adjust and react. But, it's not perfect. Just when you think you've anticipated every challenge, you get something new that comes, or some new personality from a client or perspective that they bring. And I think, maybe that goes back to the people that you have, having good people on your team that, are trying their best. And I think clients can sense that, and I think that's an area that I know that has really benefited us in the past when things haven't gone perfectly. The feedback that we've gotten, it's like, hey, you know what? We were thinking it was going to wrap up, at the beginning of June, and, ended up taking to the end of June because of X, Y, and Z. So that maybe wasn't ideal, but the folks that we had here, we knew that they were trying their best and they were trying to communicate, and we saw that. And so, hopefully that resonates enough where they still feel like it was a good experience. But yeah, maybe it goes back to the people that you have, and just, making sure that you've got a good team that, is trying to do the right thing, and the clients can, people can sense that.
So how do you guys handle a situation where maybe a mistake was made like on your team's side, and obviously the that maybe wasn't part of the plan or something like that? How do you handle that kind of a situation?
Yeah. So, ultimately we're trying to do the right thing, because I think that's what is going to uh, you know, give us the ability to hopefully still, create a good experience. And maybe if this one isn't perfect, I think, again, people can kind of sense like, hey, they're trying to make this right here. They're trying to do the right thing. And not every job is perfect, in terms of the outcome. And oftentimes, we see that on the business side where it's like financially that job just didn't quite go the way that we wanted. But at the end of the day, like, is the end product going to hold up? Is it going to function the way that they want? Does it look the way that they want? And is the client, happy and satisfied with the outcome? That usually ends up being the situation where, and that's just the cost of being in business. It's like, you know what, we got to make this right here, and that might mean we have to take this apart or do this again or order this again, and that happens, but that's how we've been in business for so long, because I think that people inherently are going to pick up on those things, and they're going to be able to say like, hey, these guys are trying to do it right, and we appreciate it, and it's not perfect, but at the end of the day, they got what we wanted.
No, it's impressive. How many years you guys been in business? 40?
82. So my dad
82.
started in 82.
Okay,
Yeah.
82.
So yeah, what is that? 43?
43 years. Yeah, super impressive. No, so we really appreciate you coming in, sharing all your knowledge with us and stuff. If anybody wants to get a hold of you guys or learn more about Custom Craft, what's the best way to learn more?
Yeah, well, certainly our website. So www.customcraftdbr.com, and that's design, build, remodel. We're also on social media. So we're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. You can kind of check us out. We post pretty regularly some of the cool projects that we're doing, and certainly some of the awesome videos that you guys have done for us. They'll be making their rounds on there. So I think we should hopefully be pretty easy to find. And yeah, check us out, and feel free to give us a call, drop us an email. Always appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thanks again for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Stories from the Top is your guide to successful business development. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or find Edge of Cinema on YouTube. Stories from the Top is an Edge of Cinema production, hosted by Matthew Skura and Jeremy Schmidt. To learn more or get in touch, visit edgeofcinema.com/podcast.